I would say there's some kind of a anomaly going on down there that we can't explain.
Mariners' tales for decades, the stuff of urban legends. It's the Bermuda Triangle.
On September 17, 1950, journalist Edward Van Winkle Jones published an article documenting a disturbing pattern. In the past 5 years alone, ships of the sea and air have vanished without a trace in the Atlantic off the southeastern coast of the US. Yet the piece didn't include any explanation for why this particular stretch of ocean seemed to swallow vessels and their crews so completely. 2 years later, another publication in Fate magazine defined the region as a watery triangle bounded roughly by Florida, Bermuda, and Puerto Rico. The actual term Bermuda Triangle wouldn't emerge until February 1964, when writer Vincent Gaddis published his work in a pulp fiction magazine called Argosy. Gaddis's term rippled across the globe, and within years, the Bermuda Triangle became a worldwide phenomenon. Many incidents that were previously overlooked from decades past also resurfaced as evidence of the region's sinister reputation. In this video, we'll explore 5 unsolved disappearances surrounding the Bermuda Triangle mystery. But before diving in, if you're into uncovering the world's greatest mysteries like I do, make sure to hit that subscribe button and bell icon to stay in the loop for future videos. Now, let's begin our journey. On December 5, 1945, from Naval Air Station Fort Lauderdale, 5 TBM Avenger torpedo bombers lifted off into what was described as ideal flying weather. This squadron, designated Flight 19, carried 14 men embarking on a routine navigation exercise that should have lasted just 2 hours. None of them would ever return. The mission plan was straightforward: fly 141 miles east for bombing practice, then 73 miles north, and finally 138 miles back to base, a simple triangular route over familiar waters. At approximately 3:40 p.m., after completing their practice bombing runs over Hens and Chickens Shoals, mission leader Lieutenant Charles Taylor, a seasoned pilot with over 2,500 flight hours, radioed back to base with an alarming message as both his compasses were malfunctioning.
I don't know where we are. Must have gotten lost after that last turn. Both my compasses are out and I'm trying to find Fort Lauderdale, Florida.
Taylor, who had previously flown training missions over the Florida Keys, apparently misidentified the Bahamas below him as the Keys, leading him to make a fatal navigational decision. Believing he needed to fly northeast to reach Florida, he led his squadron away from land rather than toward it. Other pilots in the formation reportedly radioed,
"We cannot find west. Everything is wrong."
Yet they continued to follow Taylor's lead. As darkness fell and fuel gauges dropped toward empty, ground stations picked up increasingly desperate transmissions.
"When the first plane drops below 10 gallons, we all go down together. Everyone understand that?"
And by 7:04 p.m., the final radio contact was logged. Minutes later, Flight 19 vanished from radar. The Navy launched one of the largest search operations in history, scouring over 250,000 square miles of ocean and coastline. In a chilling echo of the original tragedy, a rescue plane with 13 crew members also vanished during the search, with witnesses on nearby ships reportedly observing an explosion in the distance. The official Navy accident reports at the time all mysteriously concluded the cause to be unknown and shared similar remarks as aircraft and engine lost at sea. Nearly 5 decades later, a discovery briefly reignited hope. In May 1991, British submarine designer Graham Hawkes was scanning the Florida coast for Spanish treasures when he stumbled upon what appears to be the wreckage of 5 Navy planes. However, analysis soon revealed the aircraft bore unidentifiable serial numbers, and they were of a model predating 1945. The real Flight 19 and all the souls aboard remain lost to this day. Imagine a ship longer than a football field simply vanishing. No explosion, no mayday call, no trace. That's exactly what happened to the USS Cyclops. On March 4, 1918, this 542-foot collier, carrying 10,800 tons of manganese ore and 306 crew members, departed Barbados and bound for Baltimore. Conditions that day, as Captain George Worley reported, were weather fair, all well. Yet this massive vessel never made it to the destination. When the Cyclops failed to arrive by its expected date of March 13th, concern rippled through Naval Command. And by March 20th, the vessel was officially overdue. An extensive search operation scoured the ship's projected route. Yet, as later shared by Franklin D. Roosevelt, Assistant Secretary of the Navy at the time, all attempts to locate her having proved unsuccessful. Several theories have emerged over the decades. German submarine attack was initially suspected, though post-war German records confirmed no U-boats operated in that area during the relevant period. Then some engineers have proposed structural failure to be the culprit. The Cyclops had an unusual flat-bottom design with a top-heavy superstructure, and the dense manganese ore, if improperly loaded, could have shifted in rough seas, causing the ship to capsize with terrifying speed. More recent theories invoke methane hydrate eruptions and natural gas releases from the seafloor that can theoretically reduce water density enough to sink a ship almost instantly, potentially explaining the absence of distress signals. However, the U.S. Geological Survey maintains that no large methane releases have occurred in the region for at least 15,000 years, adding an eerie dimension to the mystery. Two of the Cyclops' sister ships, the USS Proteus and USS Nereus, also disappeared along nearly identical routes in 1941, both carrying heavy metallic ore and vanishing without distress signals. This pattern has led many researchers to favor the structural failure theory, suggesting a fatal design flaw shared by all three vessels. UFO abduction, time warp, even the involvement of the lost civilization of Atlantis. These are some wild theories about what might have happened to the fate of these two identical Avro Tudor IV aircrafts operated by British South American Airways. Within the span of just 1 year, they both vanished without a trace while flying nearly the same route through the Bermuda Triangle. The Star Tiger disappeared first, on January 30th, 1948, during the final leg of a London to Havana journey, with refueling stops planned at Lisbon, the Azores, Bermuda, and Kingston. After a weather delay the night before in the Azores, the aircraft finally departed at 3:34 p.m. with 25 passengers and 6 crew aboard, bound for Bermuda, with Captain Brian McMillan making the critical decision to fly at an abnormally low altitude to avoid headwinds. After nearly 12 hours in the air, the aircraft's radio operator requested and received a radio bearing from Bermuda at 3:15 a.m. on January 30th. 2 minutes later, at 3:17 a.m., the operator acknowledged receipt of the bearing with a simple confirmation. That message was the last communication ever received from Star Tiger. When the aircraft failed to contact Bermuda by 3:50 a.m., and after repeated unsuccessful communication attempts, a state of emergency was declared at 4:40 a.m. A massive 5-day search was carried out, but found absolutely nothing. Lord Macmillan, who led the official inquiry, concluded bleakly, "What happened in this case will never be known, and the fate of Star Tiger must remain an unsolved mystery." Then, almost exactly 1 year later, on January 17, 1949, history repeated itself with chilling precision. The Star Ariel departed Bermuda for Kingston, carrying 13 passengers and 7 crew under the command of Captain John Clutha McPhee. This time, conditions were perfect: clear skies, excellent visibility, calm seas. Roughly an hour after takeoff, McPhee transmitted a routine message confirming their position at 18,000 feet and announced he was switching radio frequencies from Bermuda to Kingston. After that, the plane was never heard from again. The parallels are unsettling. Same aircraft model, same route, experienced captains, normal final transmissions, 0 distress signals, and no wreckage despite extensive searches. Post-accident investigations revealed the Tudor 4 had known design flaws. A cabin heater prone to malfunction that could ignite hydraulic vapor and cause catastrophic explosions. Additionally, both aircraft were operating at the extreme limits of their range, where even minor errors could prove fatal. These explanations, while plausible, fail to account for the complete absence of debris in both cases. These incidents destroyed public confidence in British South American Airways, which was absorbed into British Overseas Airways Corporation later in 1949. The Tudor 4 was also withdrawn from passenger service entirely. On February 2, 1963, the SS Marine Sulphur Queen departed Beaumont, Texas, bound for Norfolk, Virginia, with 39 crew members aboard this converted World War II T-2 tanker. On February 4th, the ship radioed a routine position report placing it near Key West, Florida, noting normal conditions and steady progress. That message was the last anyone ever heard from the Marine Sulphur Queen. When the vessel failed to arrive at the destination, extensive searches from the Coast Guard were launched, but initially yielded no result. Then, nearly 2 weeks after the disappearance, pieces began washing ashore along the Florida Keys, including 7 life preservers, 4 life rings, pieces of a ship's nameboard, and 40 other items. Yet the main wreckage, especially those massive sulfur tanks, was never located, and none of the crew members were ever found. The Coast Guard investigation a year later revealed serious structural problems. The conversion from oil tanker to sulfur carrier had created dangerous weak points in the hull, as pointed out in the report. Even worse, the new design made the vessel top-heavy, meaning it could capsize even without previous structural damage. But that wasn't the only problem. The cargo itself was extraordinarily dangerous, as molten sulfur explodes when it touches water, and the heating system needed to keep it liquid could spark fires at any moment. Weather conditions on February 4th added one more risk factor. A cold front was moving through the Florida Straits, bringing winds up to 46 miles per hour and waves as high as 16 feet. For most ships, these conditions do not signal a severe storm by maritime standards, but for a compromised vessel carrying an inherently unstable cargo, they could have been the final straw. This disappearance gained additional notoriety when it was featured in Vincent Gaddis's 1965 article, The Deadly Bermuda Triangle, which helped popularize the Bermuda Triangle mystery. If the Coast Guard's investigation of the Marine Sulphur Queen left more questions than answers, their discovery 4 decades earlier was even more perplexing. On January 31st, 1921, they found a 5-masted schooner run aground on Diamond Shoals off Cape Hatteras. This place lies at the northernmost edge of what would later be known as the Bermuda Triangle. The ship was found buried deep into the sand with no single soul aboard. You're looking at the ghost ship Carroll A. Deering. The schooner departed Norfolk, Virginia in August 1920 for what should have been a routine cargo run to Rio de Janeiro and back. Captain William Merritt commanded the vessel initially, but when he fell ill during the early stages of the journey, he was replaced by 66-year-old Captain Willis Wormel. The voyage to Rio was uneventful, but the return journey in January 1921 would tell a very different story. On January 29th, the lightship at Cape Lookout reported being hailed by the Deering. But the man who called out, speaking with a foreign accent and identified as red-headed, was not Captain Wormel. He stated the ship had lost its anchors in a storm, while crew members appeared to be milling around on deck in what the lightship keeper described as highly unusual. 2 days later, the vessel was found hard aground on Diamond Shoals. When investigators finally boarded on February 4th, they discovered an unsettling scene. The ship's log, navigation equipment, and both lifeboats were missing, yet there was no sign of violence. Just an abandoned vessel with food laid out as if the crew had vanished mid-meal. The investigations that followed explored multiple theories. Piracy was dismissed when nothing of value had been taken. Mutiny seemed plausible given the reported crew tensions, but failed to explain why mutineers would abandon a seaworthy vessel. Rum running during Prohibition was also considered, though no contraband was found. The mystery deepened when a local fisherman claimed to have found a message in a bottle near the wreckage bearing the following message: "Deering, captured by oil-burning boat something like chaser. Taking off everything, handcuffing crew. Crew hiding all over ship. No chance to make escape. Finder, please notify headquarters Deering." However, handwriting experts later proved that the fisherman himself had written it, debunking the bottle note as a hoax. After months of investigation with many theories proposed, the mystery is still unsolved to this day. Until now, hundreds of ships and aircraft have vanished in these waters. I don't know what you guys think about the Bermuda Triangle mystery, but from what I've found, these disappearances seem to stem not from some dark, otherworldly force, but rather from the very human combination of navigational errors, mechanical failures, and the unpredictable fury of nature itself. But that's just my take. What about you? Is the Bermuda Triangle mystery a manufactured legend born from sensationalized journalism? Or do you share the same thoughts as mine? Let's drop your thoughts in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.